Hello and welcome back to another Demis Hellen tutorial. We're back in Dune 3, this is part 3 of the Dune 3 series, and we're looking at this section here, including the voice solo, the common voice edit section, unison voices, and we'll cover polyphony in a sense as well. If you haven't already seen the previous 2 videos, go and check them out on screen now in the top right hand corner, and there's always a link in the description so you can go and check them out before we cover this section. And we're going to get started with the very preset that we can hear playing in the background. And this is consisting of 3 voices, and that means we have one oscillator voice, which is a saw, operating 18 unison voices. These are detuned and spread to taste, so we've got quite a nice wide sound, and then this is times 3. So if this was just one voice, that would just be 18 voices of unison, whereas that is now 18 times 3. So you can see how powerful this is going to get if we was to use all 8. And before we go any further, let's just take a look at what these do before we start talking about them. So we can have a maximum of 8 voices, and you can see we have 8 solo buttons, and this just gives you the option, I'll return this to 3 here, this gives you the option to solo that particular voice, and instead of just listening to all of them, we can edit and set active layer 1, so we're only hearing the first layer. We could solo voice 2 and voice 3, and you can see that results in quite a wider sound, a lot more texture, and that's based on the spread and the detune here. I've left detune at its default, and I've increased the spread just a little bit just to help blend all these 3 layers together. So that's the solo section, that's all they do, they just solo or unsolo the particular voice layer, and these are your selection buttons for the different layers, up to 8 again, so we can solo and edit a layer at the same time. So we can say we want to edit layer 2 and we want to solo layer 2 only, and we can just work on that particular layer. Now you're not going to see anything changing anywhere when I'm clicking through these 3 voices, and that's because they're all identical. This is just one oscillator, so this one's off and this one's off. There's a smidge of noise on there, and this is just playing 3 times over, so in 3 different voices. And finally here on the common and voice edit section, we have a glide function, 2 arps, 2 effects, and a copy and paste feature. And what this does is gives us the ability to say voice 1 might have a bit of glide on it. We want to hear a little bit of portamento happening on there. And then when we switch to voice 2, you can see there's no glide activated, so only voice 1 is going to do that. So you can see now that we can start making individual edits to the sounds. We could say voice 2, we want it to be an arpeggio, and that's going to link it to the arp section, and whatever you've got programmed in there, whether that is MIDI or an arpeggiated sequence, it's going to play that. Also, we can have effects 1 or 2 active, so we can have both if we want for that voice, and then we can go back to this voice and say we only want it to go to effects bus 2. So voice 1's only going to here, and voice 2 is going to both of these. So I'm just going to switch these back. I'm just going to turn off effects 2 on here, and I'm going to put that back to effects 1 as well, and turn the glide. So the sound is pretty nice. It's got a nice full body, and you could hear when the filter opened, it was nice and super saw, and that's what we like. But I want to make it a little bit more intricate, and we're going to use the filters. We are going to cover these filters in a future video, so if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified when these go out every 2 weeks. So voice number 2, we're going to solo this in. So they're all identical at the moment, and we're just going to change things up. So this is going to be going through filter 1, and I want a little bit more of the filter to come through. So I want it to actually open up the filter a little bit more. So we can see we're soloing this. And I'm going to open up the filter, and I'm going to drop the decay just a little bit, so it's just a little bit shorter, and we don't have to worry this is not changing the overall thing for voices 1 and 3, sorry, because this is only editing voice number 2. And I want to reduce the amount of low end that's coming through this as well. I want this to be the top end of the synth, the definition, the sparkle, all that sort of good stuff. So we can go into effects bus 1, because this is going into effects 1, and we can choose the second EQ, and we could add a low pass here, and we could add a low, and we could add a high pass here. But we're not going to do that because then that affects all the other voices because they're all going through to effects 1. So let's use effects number 2, for example. We could say go through to effects 2 as well as effects 1. Use EQ1 and do a roll off. And that is more than good enough, but we're not going to do that. We're going to keep those closed. We're going to use the second filter. So I'm just going to set the balance to center. Don't worry, we will cover these in a future video. High pass, and now it's going to feed from this filter through to this filter. And then we have a high pass. So I'm going to chop the lows out. Perfect. I'm going to increase a bit of reso. And I want the top end to be cleaner, so I'm not going to use one of the analog modals. I'm going to use a low pass 12 here on the clean settings. So it's a lot clearer, a lot crisper. And I'm just going to filter a little bit more out. Perfect. Now this is going to be a bit too loud, so we can preview this with the other two. So we could just say all and turn that off. So we now hear all of the voices. So the filter's closed, but there's a lot of that sound coming through. So I'm going to drop the volume. So clicking active and edit on number 2 to make sure we're editing just one. Because if you have it selected to all, it's going to reduce this level for all of them. And we can see if we select this one, and this one, it all stays at the same level. So we want to select number 2, bring this down. That sounds quite nice and acceptable. I'm just bringing the level of the amp down instead of the overall volume of the oscillator. And then we mix these two together. Okay, so we're getting more of a vibrant sound. There's a lot more of that top end coming through. And then when we increase the mod wheel, it's letting through voice 1 and 3, but voice 2 is actually doing something that it shouldn't be doing based on my preset design, and I haven't taken a specific section out. This is the mod matrix. So I've got the mod wheel, and don't worry, we're going to cover this in a future video as well. The mod wheels here are controlling filter 1 and 2, which is great in terms of controlling the first oscillator, because there's no filter 2 on there. There originally was, but it was taken out and the mod wheel wasn't removed to control that. So what is happening at the moment on voice 2 is increasing the high pass, and if we solo that, we're going to hear that it just disappears when we actually open the mod wheel. And we don't want it to disappear, we don't want it to do anything, so I'm just going to remove those. But what we can do is something different, and I want to increase the volume of this one. So we can go again to the mod wheel, and we can go down here to the amplifier, which is your amp envelope here, and amp level, and we can return this to full volume, or maybe just a smidge. So let's just say 25. And then when we increase the mod wheel, so that increases the volume. So I'm going to increase it to about 59 there, that sounds okay. And then when we put that in context with everything else, now we get extra on top of the sound because it's increasing the level, and it makes it sound brighter and nicer. So let's demonstrate another instance of active editing a layer. So let's choose layer number 3 and solo it. Let's have a listen. Okay, and we're going to do something the same. I think what we'll do is we'll use a low pass 12 clean. We'll go for a high pass 12 here, and we'll center this balance so both filters are in operation. But I'm going to add some rate crush on here to give it a little bit of definition and color. So I'm going to bring the level down. Get rid of some of those. Bit of reso. And let's just balance that in. Let's unsolo voice 3. So there's a little bit too much in there, so I'm going to select layer 3 and drop this. Perfect. But there is one thing that we did wrong in there, and that is the amp level. If you did pick this up, please let me know down in the comments. Let's see if there's any eagle-eyed viewers out there that spotted this one, what was happening. Mod wheel is controlling the amp level, but we didn't select anything else, so all that is doing is increasing the amp level for everything. So all three voices, even though this is full level, it's not going to do anything to it, that's fine, but it's going to increase this one, and it's going to increase this one as well, because it's not telling it to do anything specific, it's just saying increase the amp level. And what we can do here is go into the section here. We don't have to select and edit a particular voice for this. Go into the voices and choose voice number 2. So now that is only affecting that, and you can see I've just scrolled the mod wheel there. So returning that back to amp level, we can see now voice 2, amp level, mod wheel is controlling only that voice, and it's not going to increase the volume for either of these two voices now of 1 and 3. So what we're going to do in this is going to add 4 voices now. So I'm going to increase this to 4, and we're going to choose solo 4 and active 4. Now we can go one step further. We're going to use the same thing here, but we're going to use oscillator number 2. And let's just say 2 voices for now. And let's just say non-linear. In fact, let's just put 6 voices so we can make use of that non-linear. So we can hear that's what we had before, but let's increase oscillator 2. So now we've got 6 voices on top of the 18 unison voices there, and the oscillator number 2 is up. Now if we take a look at the previous voices, you'll see oscillator 2 is not active now, meaning we can actually add extra oscillators in there, so we can layer the sounds up even more, and we can also increase noise, ring modulation, etc. And let's go ahead and change the filter on number 4, so making sure number 4 is still selected over here. I'm going to pick a clean 24. And let's just put a little bit of light distortion on there, why not? Okay, so now we have a secondary oscillator running alongside the primary one that we had in the original 3, and that is now going to add to the whole mix here. So let's unsolo that and choose all. So the filter's closed, it's a little bit too powerful, so I'm going to choose here. I'm going to bring the level down. And at the same time, I'm going to add mod wheel functionality again. Amplifier level, and I'm going to increase that about plus 20, and we're going to say please only do that for voice number 4. And to add even more sparkle on top of there, let's send voice number 4 through to effects number 2, and we're going to put some crazy compression on here. So we're on effects plus 2, I'm going to go to the compressor, and we're going to choose air. Let's preview this. So I'm going to set a fast release, a fairly slow attack. Let's just say 1 millisecond for now. Let's just remove the threshold. I'm going to put this to a 5:1, and let's increase this threshold. Okay, so we're just getting a bit coming through. So we can hear there's just a little bit of a spike coming through because of the compression being so hard. And then I'm just going to put a bit of reverb on here. We'll leave it on big hall, and I'm just going to remove around 60% of the low frequencies. And what I'm going to do is add some release onto the amp envelope here. So I'm just going to bring the sustain up. So now we're going through another compressor and some more reverb, and if we just turn effects 2 off, we'll hear exactly what we've just done there. So we've just increased the presence using some compression on the increase the attack, and a bit more reverb there as well. So let's have a listen to that all in context. Just solo these 3 voices so we can hear what 4's adding. And there we are, we've made the sound come alive just by sending it through a different effects chain and adding an extra oscillator. So hopefully you can see the power of Dune 3 coming through here just using that. And let's just demonstrate these detuned spread now across these 4 voices. So I'm going to reduce the spread. Let's increase the detune. So that sounds quite acceptable. There's a lot of reverb coming through from the 4th one, but this is just for demo purposes so you can hear. Probably reduce that and just make sure that we haven't got too much of the highs coming through, etc. And here we are, that is the end of this video. If you have any comments related to the video, please leave them down in the comments. Also hit the like and subscribe button so you get notified when the next upload goes live, and these are going live every 2 weeks. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.